Good evening and welcome. This is Pastor Dave Schreffler. I'm the pastor at Zion Lutheran Church in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania. It's time to do a gander at the gospel, time to take a look at how God might be calling us through His Word. Coming up for this particular Sunday, this Sunday is March 14th, 2021. I'm going to read two lessons. The first one comes to us from the book of Numbers, chapter 21, verses 4 to 9. From Mount Hor, the Israelites set out by the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. But the people became impatient on the way. The people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food, no water, and we detest this miserable food. Then the Lord sent poisonous serpents among the people, and they bit the people so that many Israelites died. People came to Moses and said, "We have sinned by speaking against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord to take away the serpents from us." So Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said to Moses, "Make a poisonous serpent and set it on a pole, and everyone who's bitten shall look at it and live." So Moses made a serpent of bronze and put it upon a pole, and whenever a serpent bit someone, that person would look at the serpent of bronze and live. And in the second reading, this is very familiar. This is from the Gospel of St. John, the third chapter, verses 14 to 21. Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him may not perish, but may have eternal life. Indeed, God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Those who believe in him are not condemned, but those who do not believe are condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For all who do evil hate the light and do not come to the light, so that their deeds may not be exposed. But those who do what is true come to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that their deeds have been done in God. The Gospel of the Lord. So the week coming up includes St. Patrick's Day, so I thought it might be good to start the Gander at the Gospel with a joke. There's a man that walked into a bar in Kerry County in Ireland, and he sat down at the bar and he ordered 3 beers. The bartender thought that odd, but he served up 3 beers. The man drank 3 beers and he left the bar. The next day he did the same. He came in, he ordered 3 beers, and drank them by himself, said goodbye, left the bar. Finally, the third day he comes in, orders 3 beers, and the bartender, now this has kind of gotten his attention. So he says, "Hey, you're new here, sir, and I see that you order 3 beers, and people are wondering about this. You know, this is a small town area. They're calling you the man who orders 3 beers." The man said, "Well, nothing really odd about this. I have a brother who lives in America and a brother who lives in Australia, and we decided that every time we go out, we're going to drink a beer, one for each of our brothers. So we're each going to drink one for ourselves and one for each brother, 3 beers." Bartender said, "Okay, that's great." And the story got around. He told it around the town, and the man, of course, was famous. Until one day, a couple of months later, the man came in and ordered 2 beers. And the bartender was really down, feeling down. Maybe this was just a strange anomaly, but the next day he only ordered 2 beers. So the bartender finally said, "Sir, I'm sorry about the death of one of your brothers, only ordering 2 beers." And the man thought for a second. He goes, "I want you to be relieved. None of my brothers have died. You see, in fact, it's Lent, and I've given up drinking for Lent." We come into Lent with a lot of hope and expectation. We have great plans that our behavior will help boost our relationship with God. And many people enter this time with the enthusiasm that some people enter New Year's, after some time, they find maybe a week or so into their Lenten discipline, they've given up already. Or it becomes such a focus that it serves more to become their relationship with God in doing something or taking on this discipline versus just that, solidifying that relationship with God. And we are, of course, throughout the season of Lent, we are encouraged to participate in one of three disciplines in Lent: prayer, fasting, and giving alms, giving to the poor. But when we put our Lenten disciplines, we push ourselves that becomes the main focus, then we lose ourselves in the effort rather than focusing on our trust and relationship on God. What becomes our focus is doing the discipline. You understand what I'm saying? We want our efforts to be sincere, but when we're so tuned in to the efforts, we might in fact tune ourselves out from God. We hear in the Old Testament lesson, I included this lesson from Numbers today because Moses was dealing with people who thought they were tuned in to God, but in fact they had tuned out many, many times. Moses had led them out of Egypt. He dealt with the nasty golden calf episode. He had given them the 10 Commandments. Moses oftentimes had to bargain with God not to smite these people because of their complaining. And here they're complaining that they detest the food. And Moses, steps up for the people. He pleads for the people. As always was the case, Moses was tuned in to God, but the people continually found themselves tuning out and thinking only of themselves. Don't you wish, just once in a while, that we might really find a way, and not just in Lent, that we can really pay attention to God all of the time, that we can encourage others to really focus in on God, or that we might find ways that we might, like God, send snakes into people's lives to make them more focused on their relationship with God. I don't want that to sound really mean, but even for a lot of people, even the season of Lent doesn't help them focus on their relationship with God. They just continually go through the motions. Faith is just going through the motions for a lot of people. And God sending the snakes amongst the people that are complaining serves two purposes, right? The snakes are a punishment for their complaining, and they are an awful punishment, if not a wake-up call for the people. But God also uses the same thing that he gave them as punishment, he uses it as their salvation. The snakes are instruments both of death and life. What God had used for death, God also used for life. And hearing that lesson in Lent should make us pay attention to our Lenten disciplines, but also our relationship with God. It's easy to find ourselves complaining in the midst of, especially in this country, complaining in the midst of real plenty. For the people who were there with Moses wandering for 40 years, you would think that miracle bread from heaven, quail that seemed to have an inability to fly and just have all the people had to do was go out and gather the quail, that it might get their attention to how much God has blessed them. And what do they say? We detest this miserable food. What they're saying is, God, we detest what you have provided for us. That's really what they're saying. They're so tuned into themselves that they've tuned out God. And the same can be true for us. That's kind of what I'm talking about with our Lenten disciplines. We give up things like chocolate and coffee and other bad habits in general. And that becomes the focus because we turn in and focus on ourselves, that we forget that these efforts are supposed to help us get closer to God, not to focus on the accomplishments that we think that we are achieving. So, what can we learn for this week coming up as we are well into our Lenten disciplines? I would say this: we need to remember that these Lenten disciplines that we are doing are not about us. Lent is not about what we do, it's supposed to be what God does through us and how we can open ourselves up to God. We may not always be faithful with our disciplines, often we may fail miserably, but God is in our accomplishments, God is also in our failures. God only asks us to have trust and faith. And any time that we focus on our relationship with God, my friends, is time well spent. And, the 2020, 2021 have really highlighted how difficult life can get. Um, we've really been challenged to look at how God might be in this pandemic. Um, many people have said, well, God must be really angry with us, or people will look at this as God punishing people. Now, first of all, I don't believe that. I do believe God is in the pandemic, but God is not withdrawing God's blessings on us. God knows that we are prone to mistake. God knows that we stumble from time to time on our faith journeys. But there are things that happen in this world that are cannot be attributed to God, who would be punishing us. Viruses happen because we live in a sinful world. Earthquakes, tornadoes, pandemics, all of those things, because this is a world where we have free will, and we become instruments of God's working in this world, and sometimes that veil between God and humanity gets very thin, and we see miracles that happen. We see the way that God works mysteriously and wondrously in this world. But we also realize that this world is a broken world. I've looked around. This is not heaven, right? We live in a sinful and a broken world. And so we cannot blame this pandemic upon God. But we can see how God works through the blessings that happen every day, through the fact that we have a vaccination that was developed and approved within less than a year, which is a miracle in and of itself. We have to count our blessings. We think about the people wandering in the wilderness with Moses. They are lying half dead on the ground, being bitten by a serpent. And all they had to do was look up at the serpent on the pole, and they were saved. And we think about it. Think about how we start Lent. We start Lent with Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday, told that we are dust, and to dust we shall return. We're told that we are people who are the half dead walking, right, or the dead walking. We're as good as dead, and yet there we are. We look at the cross on Good Friday, and we realize that that is our salvation as well. Now, does that mean that the snakes of this world leave us? The ways that evil tries to bite at us all the time? Of course not. Snakes are snakes. And as the lesson from the Gospel of John, clearly tells us, that there are people who love darkness rather than love light, and evil is always going to be around, encouraging people to go to the darkness rather than the light, because in the darkness it can help to hide their sins. We are a sin-sick people. But let's take a moment. I'm kind of rambling on. I want you to take some time right now and want you to think about the ways that you have been blessed by God. How have you been blessed by God in your life, maybe in the ministries that you are involved in, within your church, how are you blessed? There's so many ways that we are blessed. We're blessed within our families, our work, our relationships, the amount of abundance, the plenty that we have. There are many spiritual gifts that we are given, that we are called to use. And yet it's not enough just to realize how blessed you are. I want you to think about how you have been a blessing to others. How have you been a blessing to others this past week? And I want you to think about how can you be a blessing to others this week? I end my Gander at the Gospel always with go out and be someone's thankful. And what I mean by that is, go out and live your life so that people are thankful that you are in their life because you are a blessing to them. God calls us out to be blessings to others because in being blessed, in the many ways that we are blessed, we are called in this relationship with God to bless others. We're to recognize how we are blessed, and then we need to go out and be a blessing so that others can see the good news, not only hear the good news, but they can see it through your witness in what you are doing. Whether you're being a blessing to the poor, being a blessing to those who mourn, being a blessing to those who are hungry. It is easy to be tuned in to what we're doing for Lent, that it becomes the focus and we actually tune God out. And that is something we need to be very, very careful of. When we look at the Israelites and we realize that even in the ways that they had been blessed, what did they want? They wanted to go back to Egypt. They wanted to go back to be fed by the flesh pots that they had. They wanted to go back into the misery that they had come out of because they couldn't realize the blessings and appreciate the blessings that God had given them. They felt that having to depend on God took them out of control. And my friends, faith is about how we show our obedience and our trust and our reliance upon God. The people who were wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites, lost that relationship from time to time and had to be reminded to let go of the past and to recognize that their future path, though it may be difficult, was heading in a place where God was leading them. And they were being strengthened and blessed by God each and every day. And yet they were never satisfied, right? They were never really happy with the answers that Moses provided. As soon as Moses would leave them, they would do something like build the golden calf or do something else that would show how easy it is to slip back into those ways that we are disobedient. So we remember the people, the Israelites, how they had forgotten how blessed they were and how God used an instrument of death, the snakes, actually had used it also as an instrument for life. And it is the same for our faith and reliance and trust in Jesus Christ. The cross, the implement of death, is also for us the implement of life, that Christ went to the cross for us. So when we moan and groan about the snakes that are biting us, we need to consider this Lent the ways that our relationship with Jesus Christ is blessing us to appreciate the abundance and the blessings that we have. So I hope this is helpful for you as we continue on in this season of Lent, as we continue on in this pandemic. My friends, remember that it's not your church, whatever church you belong to. That's not really what your faith is about. It's not what theologian you follow. Your relationship with God begins with your relationship with Jesus Christ and your trust and appreciating the blessings and recognizing how you can be a blessing to others. And that is how we live out our faith each and every day. Again, go out and be someone's thankful this week. God bless you.